Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Stephen Burton and Pete McCottis proudly bring to you episode 2 of the Catching Flies Wrestling Podcast. And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you. Hey, Pete, welcome back to episode 2 this week of the Catching Flies Wrestling Podcast. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. This is a message to all those who didn't think we'd make it to episode 2. We did it. Yeah.
2 down, hopefully 200 more to go.
Yeah, no, for real, we've had nothing but great support. What information we've heard from people has been positive, so that makes us feel real good about this. And we're just getting started, y'all. This is, as Steven said, we are in episode 2. 200 more to go. 200,000 sounds good to me. How long do you plan on staying alive?
Right.
But yeah, it's been another fun week in general. The wrestling world being no different. We left off last week, and Dynamite was going on the air later that night. Tell us what you thought, Steven.
Yeah, great show. We're gonna hit the highlights. The biggest part of the show, without question, to me, was Saraya's huge announcement. Through a lot of hard work, I'm sure, on her end, she's finally been cleared again, and I think it's a huge boost to the AEW women's division. We're gonna get Britt Baker and Saraya at full gear, and we're gonna do more of our picks for the match a little later on today, so I won't get into that just quite yet. But overall, I thought it was great news. I from my couch here at the house, I got cold chills when she said that. You could see how much it meant to her. You could see the passion, and the fans were excited. And I think we're gonna get you can call this the biggest women's match in AEW history so far. I think the future is much brighter for that division now. They're establishing stars. They're bringing in some big names. To me, biggest women's match in AEW history. What's your thought on that, Pete?
I mean, certainly for any non-title match, absolutely. There's no question about it. But even concluding title matches, it seems like it could be, because it would set the establishment for the division. I mean, we've agreed, and I think it's a kind of a perception out there that the women's division is the weakest part of the show, not through any fault of the women themselves. They're hard workers and all that, but they're not being booked all that great. They're not being given the proper amount of time. Their matches aren't being given that time to breathe, and they need that boost. And if it needs to bring an outsider to do it, and then I guess so be it. But at least they're putting Saraya in the ring with Britt Baker, who is, if not definitely the face of the women's division of AEW, maybe even the face of the whole company, if given the proper opportunity. I'm totally down with what you said about getting the cold chills. It just seemed to me, so when Britt was done talking, Britt was doing her thing. She was being bold and brash and arrogant, which, she does perfectly. And then Paige just kind of out of nowhere jumped in with her sob story. And I'm not trying to denounce it. I'm not trying to deny her struggles. They're real. But it didn't completely fit for me. It's like that promo should have been done on its own. And it felt to me like Britt was just reacting because the script said so. Again, not to deny her comeback, her trials, her tribulations. I'm thrilled that she can wrestle again. Clearly, this is the most important thing in her life, and I'm happy for her. And I'm really looking forward to seeing her get in there. Just the promo fell off for me at the end.
Absolutely. I think it's fair to say it went a little long. I think they may have gotten a little lost, so to speak. Saraya brought up her own struggles with addiction. And if anybody has had that in their problem or struggled with that themselves, you know how difficult that is to overcome and to get into a better place, which she appears to be in now, thankfully. On top of the public humiliation, we're not really going to deep dive into that. If you're curious, you can look into it. But she says this girl's overcome a lot. So glad to, just very happy to see her back in the squared circle. Big match where she belongs. She's really revolutionized women's wrestling 5, 6 years ago. Before she was the Saraya, Paige in the WWE. She's doing moves. She's doing matches that, quite frankly, women had never done before. So I think, like you said, if AW gives the women some better stories, some more time to breathe in the match. And you got to get the stars. That's what it's about. If you're wanting the viewers to watch, you need big names, and Soraya is definitely one of them.
Absolutely.
Uh, Quickly on Dynamite, the only other thing that really caught my eye, I mean, outside of the Acclaim, which we love to death, would be the Sammy Guevara Brian Danielson 2 out of 3 falls match. Uh, Brian Danielson, he's another guy that had a neck issue that we thought we'd never get to see again. And then, he did make a comeback, thankfully. And now that he's in AEW, I thought, he might take it a little easy or do a little less. But man, did he prove that wrong. He is going all out. He has had banger match after banger, just incredible work. I don't know if there's a more physical um, style that anybody works than Brian Danielson. And overall, I thought that was a great match. I was wondering your thoughts.
I mean, that dude's a dog, right? That dude's
1,000%.
he's the absolute dog.
The junkyard dog.
He's the junkyard dog. He is the junkyard community dog. I mean, he's everything you want in a pro wrestler. He really is. Talking about Brian, I'll talk about him in general before I jump into the match. So, a lot's been written, a lot's been said about this dude's quality, and I want to break down why specifically he is so good. So, number one, he goes at it. He's not the biggest dude in the ring more often than not, but he goes for it. He is not afraid to be physical, to receive physicality. And on top of that, he has the ring psychology down to an absolute science. This dude knows what move to do, when to do it, how impactful it needs to be in order to gain that audience reaction. And whether he's a face or a heel, he knows how to get the right reaction. He knows how to build to the next thing. This dude could have a WrestleMania classic in his sleep.
Absolutely.
I mean, he is just so good. I mean, Sammy Guevara, he is athletic. There's no question. He is at times a little reckless, which can pop a crowd.
Sure.
He is far from a bad wrestler, but he doesn't have this kind of match with anybody else other than Brian Danielson. We're gonna say Daniel Bryan. When you know
I know,
something
right?
for 10 years, it's tough to go, and that's anybody. I think we did good not to say Paige's name for the longest time. We kept
Right.
Soraya, but Danielson, um, you put him in there. That's the old saying: you put him in there with a broom, and it's going to be a highly rated match. So the strategy of the match, it's something we've seen before in a 2 out of 3 falls match, where the heel will take the intentional disqualification, kind of lose the battle to give himself a chance to win the war. It's not overused. It made sense for Sammy to do that. The story of that match is that he is the underdog to the great Brian Danielson. So yeah, take some liberties, get the DQ, get that second fall, and go for the third fall. It's something you see in Iron Man matches too, where they might take a DQ in order to have a
Well,
couple
the
of.
Lesnar one comes to mind when you said that. I think it's a great tactic by the heel. It gets them, I don't want to say cheap heat, but definitely heat, and it allows you to appear to really beat down the babyface to the point where how in the world are they gonna come back and win another match? So I really liked how they did that as well. I think the future is definitely bright for Sammy Guevara. He's very young, supremely athletic. But yeah, Daniel took him to school Wednesday night and put it to him pretty good. But outside of Omega I don't think there's a better wrestler in the world today outside of Omega and Seth Rollins than Bryan Danielson.
We're talking
He's
about,
that high for me.
yeah, we're talking about strictly between the ropes, like the
Right.
actual act of wrestling. Yeah, there's nobody better than Danielson at this point in time. Yeah, Sammy has a chance to grow. He needs to get more psychological in the ring. You know, flippy stuff is what we're going to call it for now. Goes for a certain amount of time, and then then what have you done for me lately? But yeah, being in there with someone like Danielson can only help.
I agree 100%. Moving on from Dynamite to SmackDown. What an epic first match. I know you loved it. Why don't you break it down a little for us?
So yeah, the opening match was Usos against the New Day. We talked about this on the show last week. How everything was pointing to this match because the Usos were on the verge of breaking the New Day's record for longest reign as tag team champions. This is a feud that has been going for a long time. The New Day wasn't much thought of when they first came together. The Usos weren't really much thought of when they first came together. For them to have an off and on, borderline decade long feud that I don't even know if they culminated this past Friday because I'm sure they're going to meet each other again. But that was an apex of their feud. And the Usos got the win. They're going to break the New Day's record. The New Day seem more than happy to pass that torch over the Usos. Not that they're stepping aside, obviously, just that excuse me, that title record. But as they always do, these four, sometimes five, when Big E's involved, had a great match, told a great story. Even though the Usos won, I felt like the star of the show was Xavier Woods.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he does so much little things. I mean, he is the carpet that brings the room together that Mr. Lebowski was always talking about. You guys have seen that movie. This carpet just pulls the room together. I kind of butchered that, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I agree 100%.
Yeah,
He made that
Xavier,
match go.
yeah, Xavier and his facial expressions. It's just funny to think that this dude came through NXT. He was kind of a nerd character, which is fine. I totally dig that. Uh, Power Ranger lover, whatever it was. To today,
Right.
where he could stop wrestling today, walk away, hang up the boots, and he's a guaranteed future Hall of Famer. It's great.
Absolutely. All three of them, I believe, are going to definitely make or all five for that matter, are
Right.
definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. This match it had me, man. It hooked me. I was on the edge of my chair, literally thought three or four different times that the match was going to be over. No way he's kicking out of this. They uh they gave him plenty of time, even though it was live TV. Just a great story all in all. And the bloodline comes out on top like they have so many times and continue to show their dominance. So, maybe one day when E gets back, God willing, he's able to return and wrestle again. Maybe we can get Xavier and Big E versus them, or Kofi and E versus them to really, round out that feud. But even though the Usos only have 8 title reigns and technically the New Day has 10, I still think that with this match, the Usos are the greatest tag team in WWF or WWE history.
Wow, that's a good take, brother.
I don't know who you could put ahead of it. I mean, there's so many great tag teams throughout the years, but if you look at the longevity, the amounts of title reigns, to me, they just, I mean, it's fitting that they're twins because they look like one person, almost just in sync. They're so in sync and so good at what they do. So to me, they're the best.
All right. Well, that'll basically do it for SmackDown. Lots of stuff happened, obviously.
Yeah,
Uh,
there was some other stuff,
yeah, well, we promised
nothing
you
that
guys going to be a
important.
blow by blow recap show. We want to hit the big stuff, and yeah, obviously Bloodline stuff. Looks like Brawling Brutes are helping round out the Survivor Series card. Looks like it's going
Yeah,
to be a War Games match.
real quick on that, were you kind of surprised? It doesn't seem they're doing the Raw versus SmackDown this year. It's more. just feuds within the show.
Yeah,
Um,
looks like it's a War Games theme this year, so they're gonna, and that's fine. You know, you have to
right, that's fine.
sometimes when you have to book champion versus champion. It's like, who do we put over? Uh,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, let's try this. They've been doing War Games down in NXT, but they haven't so much brought it up to the main roster.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to lead to a great, it's going to be 5-on-5, 4-on-4 style match. So really looking forward to it. That being said, I think SmackDown has been rounded out. Let's jump to Monday Night Rollins. I mean Raw.
Well, I think you nailed it, right? Like you mentioned earlier, you're talking about Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan. Tell us why Seth's so good, Bowen.
My goodness. First of all, the suit. You had to notice it. Where he finds these suits at are it's unbelievable. Now that he's got his hair blonde too, it really just taps it off. Uh, I mean, he's just in another world right now. With him and himself, like he's just supremely athletic, supreme storyteller. I mean, just everything he does is so good. Now that they allowed the fans, the WWE is listening to the fans and are turning Rollins, which is huge because they would never do that in the past. I think that's a more of Triple H thing, but I'm glad they're doing it. They're gonna. I think Rollins could honestly become a babyface to the point where he might be the one to dethrone Reigns down the line somewhere. I don't want to jump too far ahead. I want to enjoy this moment that we have with him now. He's brought meaning back to the US title, which who knows the last time it had any meaning. And I just I can't get enough of Seth Rollins right now, man. He's on fire.
Well, you're not alone. You can see that crowd reaction every time he comes out. I thought for a while Seth was, and I'm not saying he's not so good anymore, but he was so good that he was kind of transcending the whole babyface heel dynamic. But it looks like you're
Absolutely.
right. Yeah, it looks like you're right. They're steering into the babyface side of him, and someone like Austin Theory, we're gonna touch on him in a moment. Clearly a heel, unquestionably, undoubtedly a heel. And the incident they had at the end of the night where Rollins beat him down. If we weren't convinced that Seth was a face before that, he sure is now, right?
Absolutely. 100%. He instantly catapults himself to the top babyface spot. Um, Theory, as you mentioned last weekend, now that the briefcase is gone, I think we're going to see a new side of him, an almost new version of him. Grew the beard out. I think he looked more rough and tough, and he just looks pissed off. And I hope that anger of not winning a title by cashing in and fuels him to really reach his potential because I mean obviously to be that young and that good, he's got a bright future. So all in all though, I think we're going to get that match at Survivor Series, right? It's got to be Theory and Rollins.
If it's not a one-on-one, it could be part of a larger match, and they may be saving the one-on-one. But never underestimate the ability of a wrestler to get over because of a beard. Just look at Drew McIntyre before the beard, and Drew McIntyre after the beard, right? If he shaved his beard, he'd lose some heat, wouldn't he?
Oh, I could only imagine.
Yeah.
He
I
would
mean,
have to.
shave the goatee, he'd lose some heat. I mean, facial hair matters.
But yeah, Rollins is just on another level right now. That the Roman Reigns is the only one in the industry I think that knows, or is on the same level as Rollins. Like he's just killing it right now. Can't say
Right.
enough good things about him.
Yeah, and we made that comparison. We're talking about Bryan Danielson probably being the best purely in between the ropes. If you take the entire total package, you could do a lot worse than Rollins. And
Right.
number one is
Because
not
if
typical.
Daniel does have a weakness, he's not always the strongest on promos, which Seth is really coming to his own. It seems here this last year and a half or so. I mean, he wasn't a bad talker by any means, but it seems like this new character is giving him that freedom to say whatever's on his mind, to say however he wants to say it. He's not worried about being a good guy or a bad guy. He just is. And that is awesome right now.
Absolutely. So well, Raw was a pretty good show. It seems, I think the general consensus out there, and I definitely agree, is that Dynamite is leaps and bounds ahead of Rampage, and that SmackDown, SmackDown's always kind of been the B show historically. Raw was it came first. It's an hour longer, but as soon as SmackDown, of course, moved over to Fox, SmackDown kind of took the unofficial mantle of the A show. They won't call it that on TV, but it seems like it is. And SmackDown does have a slightly higher quality than Raw. I think this past week SmackDown was a touch better than Raw, but both shows were pretty fun. Hopefully, Tony Khan figures out something to do with Rampage, and that can be another excellent because what's wrong with more wrestling? We like wrestling. And give us another great hour of wrestling, and we'll be all over that.
Well, my thought behind Rampage is it's really struggled bad these last few months, and there's no excuse for it. They've got so many guys under contract. That could be a good show, even though it's only an hour. Um, so until they step their game up, we probably won't go too in depth on Rampage, but they've got the talent to make it a good show. As far as SmackDown, I think they're not blowing Raw out of the water, but they have a substantial lead. And SmackDown to me is the best wrestling show in all of wrestling right now.
That's a I wouldn't say an easy proclamation, but it's a legitimate one for sure. All right, so just for the time being, right here, we're going to put a little pause on the wrestling talk before we head over to make our predictions for this weekend's Full Gear pay per view. In the meantime, if there is any topic that you ever want us to cover, there's lots of ways to get a hold of us. If you're listening to us on YouTube, the comment section would be great. If you want to hit us on our Twitter, it would be Catching Flies W1 at Catching Flies W1. I'm not the most educated Twitterite in the world, but I'm gonna learn in time. But yes, please, because we're not
Sorry.
as being a weekly show. We're not gonna go through every single thing that happens because as entertaining as we are, that's gonna be too long for a lot of people. So we want to keep the show kind of shorter in that regard, hitting the big topics. But certainly, if there's a clamoring out there for something, let us know. So that being said, this past Sunday in the NFL, we had what many out there are calling the game of the year. And it just so happens that our Stephen Burton's favorite football team, the Minnesota Vikings, was part of that game of the year. Final score: Minnesota 30, Minnesota 33, Buffalo 30 in overtime. Steven, hit us with it.
My goodness, what a game. This game had it all, come out, start fast for the Vikings. Justin Jefferson is doing his thing. Then, it starts getting sleeting, it starts sleeting and snowing, and it's cold. It's Buffalo, The guys fall apart for a quarter or two. All of a sudden, we're down 17. I'm like, what is happening? We're better than this. I didn't know if we could beat the Bills, but I thought we could at least give them a game. And then Kirk Cousins does what Kirk Cousins has done this year. Another fourth quarter comeback. I believe that's our seventh fourth quarter comeback of the year. Capped off with uh, the greatest catch I've ever seen. I consider myself a 20-year plus avid NFL fan / college football fan. And the one-handed falling back, ripping it out of the hands of a defender on the way down to the ground, just unbelievable. I mean, Justin Jefferson, catch of the year, in the game of the year, huge win for Minnesota. Uh, Huge for the fan base. We're not used to beating top tier teams, to be frank. Usually prime time is not Kirk Cousins' time to shine. So I was glad to see him put together a very good game, capped off by Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. And you can't take nothing away from Buffalo. They played their tails off. They've got an incredible team. Josh Allen is a little banged up. He fought through it, played the whole game. I mean, pinning them deep there in the fourth quarter. Or, well, we went for it on 4th and 1 from the goal line. We got stood up. Kirk, don't know why they're going with Kirk Cousins on a sneak when you got Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, but they went for a QB sneak, got stood up, but then Josh Allen can't take a kneel down to win the game because they're on the half-yard line. So the football gods really gave us one there because Josh Allen fumbled it. We recovered. They kind of evened the score out by allowing Buffalo to go down and kick a field goal to send it to overtime in 30 seconds. But overall, the football gods were on our side. Minnesota comes out a winner, and just absolutely insane game. To me, the biggest takeaway from this game, however, though, has been all the referee talk. So my question to you, what is going on in the NFL with these refs?
Yeah, well, NFL referees have always had a slight reputation for coming up a little short in big moments. That's an unfair reputation because they do a good job most of the time, but it just seems like when they miss it, the spotlight hits. So the biggest call I would say in this game, and tell me if you agree with me, is the Gabriel Davis reception.
Absolutely.
Agreed, yeah. So I mean, the Bills did the right thing. So just to break it down quickly, he made what appeared to be a catch on the sideline, falling down out of bounds. And it looked like a catch to me live, and then they showed the replay real quick, and it looked like he may have let the ball hit the ground. The Bills did the smart thing by running up to the line and calling the play and snapping the ball. I mean,
Absolutely.
the replay official can't just automatically stop the play. They have to take a look at it first, and Bills didn't give them the time to do it. So, speaking of the football gods, it seems like the football gods held Buffalo to the field goal there in order to let the game go to overtime and then let them
Yeah,
decide.
they balanced it out for sure there at the end. The refs are just I mean, I was listening to McAfee talk today about it on his podcast. And I agree with him in the aspect of, look, it's a multi-billion like multi-billion dollar industry. There's no reason they can't hire these guys to be full-time officials because most of them are part-time. A lot of people don't know this, but they work other jobs. They're just normal people. They don't make huge money, but they need to. They need to be hired full time. They need to have, I don't know if it's like a union type of deal or just some kind of guidelines to where they can get raises and whatnot. Because if you're, especially with gambling being involved now, there's millions of dollars bet on every game, and if you've got these part-time refs involved, it's too much at stake anymore for there to be missed calls with all the 8K cameras, all of the angles, and it's just they just got to get it right. They got to be better. Because if this would have been a playoff game, what if this would have been a Super Bowl? You know what I mean? Like, or if it would have prevented one of these teams from reaching the playoffs because of the blown Gabe Davis call. He clearly didn't catch it on the sideline. It should have been reviewed. The Vikings couldn't challenge it because it was under 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. So you're taking away, which is another thing. Should they be allowed to challenge under 2 minutes? I don't know, but if you're taking that option away from the head coaches and the teams, then you have, as the ref, have to stop and check that, because that could have cost Minnesota the game easily.
It could have. Um,
And this isn't the only games they've impacted. I've seen several missed calls. I mean, I think immediately of the Tampa Bay call where they call roughing the passer on Atlanta, cost Atlanta that game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Like, cost them the opportunity to win, that's for sure. I do want to ask you one important question about the Vikings. Before I do that, a quick, just a little recap on the NFL. The Eagles did take their first loss of the season on Monday night.
Pop the champagne.
Right,
72 Dolphins. They're popping the champagne, man.
we lost it at home on Monday night, the same way the Steelers did a couple years ago. They were at home on Monday night against Washington in a game no one expected them to win, and they did. My question about the Vikings to you stems from the comment that I made last week about the Vikings, that they were 7-1 and probably not as good as you would expect 7-1 to be. Now they're 8-1. Are they as good as 8-1 tells us they should be.
I don't know if they're as good as 8-1 says they are, but I think they are very legit. I think I mean, it looks like they're going to win the North for sure, barring a catastrophic collapse. Uh, they're definitely going to make the playoffs. I think they can make a deep run. They've got a good defense. They've got elite pass rushers, and good luck stopping Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson to anybody they play, and Hawkinson for that matter now. So I do think they showed the entire nation that they're better than what people were proclaiming them to be. The Bills, in most people's eyes, are the AFC favorites, or AFC, or maybe even Super Bowl favorites. But I think Minnesota proved a lot with this win. It's a statement win. They are for real. And look out, NFC. They may be the favorites to win the NFC.
All right, totally awesome. And we're not trying to be homers here. And Steven's a Vikings fan, but that was the story of the week this week. And after I say that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about TCU football just a little bit here, saying that we're not being homers, but that is my school, being that I'm from Fort Worth, Texas.
We are honestly covering the biggest football stories of the
Yeah,
week. It just so happened this week it coincided with two of our favorite teams.
yeah.
So,
And the reason we think TCU, because you could argue that Oregon losing was a big story. They were the only top 10 team this week to lose. Every other top 10 team had kind of a not maybe a gimme game, but a game they were really expected to win. So
right.
I want to get on my soapbox a little bit here and get a couple things off my chest as regards college football. So TCU came into this game number 4 in the country according to the only poll that matters, the college football playoff poll. And they go to Texas, and I understand that's a rivalry game. I understand it's a road game. They were 7.5 point underdogs, man. 7.5 point underdogs. ESPN's supposed FPI, whatever that is, their guessing model, as far as I'm concerned, gave Texas a 77% chance to win. Blah 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 blah. So none of that matters. None of that matters, but it still gets my goose a little bit, and that's my fault. I'm gonna do better about not getting annoyed by that. But yeah, TC went out there and handled the game. Was it a blowout? No, it wasn't a blowout, but it was a handled victory where TCU's defense kept the Texas offense out of the end zone for the entire game. Texas scored their touchdown on a defensive score. So all that brings me around to the greater point I want to make about college football and this whole idea of preconceived notions developing from the offseason. I'm a TCU fan, and before the season started, I would have guessed our best case scenario this year was a 75 record. I really would have. I did not see this coming. Opening day against Colorado, I thought that could be a loss. Obviously, not knowing just how terrible Colorado was going to be. The whole state of Colorado State's awful too, by the way. Anyway, so they come up with these little preseason rankings, and they have this idea of who's better than who. That said, when a team like TCU emerges, they will only go as high as the other teams allow them to go unless they lose. So what I'm saying is if TCU starts the season ranked below Georgia, which of course they should have, and they start the season ranked below, let's say a team like Miami or a team like North Carolina State, they're never going to pass them in the rankings unless those teams falter. So there is this notion that TCU isn't as good as these teams. That's why they can't pass Michigan. And I'm not saying Michigan's bad. They're not. They're having a good season, but they're not playing anything close to the schedule the TCU's playing. And so, okay, fine. You're beating up on Rutgers and you're beating up on Indiana. Congratulations, TCU is playing every team in its conference. They have played 7 conference games. They have 9 conference opponents. They got 2 left. There's a chance they're going to beat every single team in their conference. Nobody can say that. Georgia won't be able to say that. Ohio State won't be able to say that. And that's by a fluke, so to speak. They're not scheduled to play every team in their conference. But TCU is, because they still got to beat Baylor, which, by the way, they're calling that a 50-50 game, too, on ESPN's FPI nonsense. Then they got Iowa State. They can beat every team in their conference and still have to play one of them one more time. and just double prove themselves. And if they lose that game, then a 2-loss TCU, a 2-loss Oregon, a 1-loss Michigan or Ohio State, a 1-loss Tennessee are all going to be thrust ahead of them. And the main reason for that is because of the preconceived notion during the preseason. Stop doing that. Watch the games, judge them by how they're performing, not by what you expect them to do. That's my rant, man.
No, I agree with you. There is a ceiling that the smaller named Power Five schools seem to reach and can't get through. I fully believe in if you're going to have four teams and they need to be the best four. And to me, you can't be a best four if you don't win a conference championship. Or at least make the conference championship game. If you're undefeated, you lose in the conference championship game, but it's close or competitive. You had one bad game to throw your whole season away. That's a bit rough. Like, for instance, if Georgia loses to LSU in the SEC title game, I still think Georgia should get in because they've been won the entire year.
Yeah.
And they haven't lost.
Yeah.
But in your scenario with TCU, if they go undefeated in the regular season and lose the Big 12 championship game, I don't know if they're going to get in.
They won't.
And it's not really right or fair. I think that's why they are trying to push this 8-team or 12-team, whatever they're going to decide on, possibly as soon as next year, to help with that. But you're 100% right. Most of these schools won't have a chance, even if they are undefeated, because they started out so low in a poll that doesn't mean anything. A poll that's created by the media that shouldn't really have any standing when it comes to the actual CFP rankings. And I'm rooting for TCU. I think they're a very good team. Ohio State and Michigan, one of them's going to lose at least one game. So I think if TCU does run the table and win the conference championship, they're definitely in. But it's probably going to take that for a team like that to get in. I don't want to see a 2-loss SEC team in over a 1-loss other team. I think if you lose twice, you should be done. So I think the expansion will help with this problem, but it is still a problem you're going to have to deal with for at least another year or so, and that's teams unfairly not getting into the playoff or into a good bowl game because of preseason.
Yeah, and where I kind of stand with that too is TCU. We're not getting 5-star recruits. We don't reload. Every now and then we can pull off seasons like these, and to have them taken away as they have been in the past. It's like the one thing that'll make me quit college football if TCU found us get in this year.
It's very unique because I believe they're the only conference that does that, where they play everybody in the conference.
Yeah, because we only have.
I know other conferences are way bigger and stuff and can't do that, but with that scenario, if they run the regular season and they're undefeated, to me that should be enough to get them in. But we're gonna have to wait and see. It's getting close. All the title games and madness will ensue in another few weeks. So really looking forward to that. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, unless I get annoyed again. But it's gonna be on. All righty.
But we'll definitely be covering it either way. Which teams get in? We'll probably do even a deep dive, maybe a college football deep dive once the playoffs actually get here.
Right. That's something we will be doing once we have the final four. But thank you for indulging us, guys, on the football talk here. Let us jump back in to wrestling on Saturday. It looks like AEW is following WWE's model, doing Saturday pay-per-views now. On Saturday, AEW will be bringing us Full Gear, which is their final pay-per-view offering of the year. Now, we still have an episode of Dynamite and an episode of Rampage left, so this might not be the final call. But of what we have now, we have 9 matches that have been booked, and they're probably going to book a couple of more. But let's run through these one by one, give us our thoughts and potentially some predictions on these. The first match on the show, well, the first match we're going to cover anyway, is for the AEW Tag Team Championships. The Acclaim will be defending against the former champion, Swerve and Our Glory. What do you think about this match?
Acclaim retain. I don't see there being any reason why Swerve and Keith Lee, who appear to be breaking up in the near future, would win these titles back. I think the acclaimed are the hottest act in all of AEW right now and will continue to be so.
Seems like based on what we saw on Dynamite this past week, the Acclaimed and FTR set up for shit. So
Definitely.
yeah, so that would have to be for the title. So it seems to me I kind of like this dynamic Swerve and Our Glory's having where one partner in the team is a face and the other one's kind of a heel. That won't last long. That will set up a match in the future. But yeah, I think we're unanimous. The Acclaim is going to be taking this one. Next up is the women's championship match, sort of. I'm not a fan of the interim champion label, but here we are. The interim AEW women's champion, Toni Storm, will be taking on Jamie Hayter. What you think?
Uh, Barring some kind of outside interference, I think Storm retains. Um, Hayter's got a bright future, but I just don't think she's there yet.
Hayter, yeah. Again, we're talking about how we think AEW might handle her push, might handle her potential ascension into the card. They don't need to give her the title to cement that. They don't have to give it to her right now, especially an interim title. It would seem that Storm is going to keep title until Thunder Rosa gets back so they can have their match. The only thing I don't like about this match, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, is that Toni Storm has the second worst wrestling theme I've ever heard in my life. Like, theme. Nothing's going to ever top Kennedy's theme. Mr. Kennedy's theme in WWE. That just I think about that and then kind of burrows a hole in my brain. But yeah, we're gonna have to hear that theme most likely twice, which is probably gonna win the match. But that's nothing against Tony Storm. Tony's good. All right, next up we have another match that's kind of been in the making for a while, and I like slow burns. And we're gonna probably get the payoff here. We're gonna have Luchasaurus taking on Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Is it Jungle Boy's time to finally get over on him this one?
Yeah, I think I think this is going to be Jungle Jack, his time to shine. I don't know really what unless they're going to keep the story going. I don't know. Well, honestly, I take that back. I think Luchasaurus is going to beat Jungle Boy because of Christian, and then they're going to lead up to the Christian Jungle Boy match. I think Jungle Boy it'll look like he's going to win, and then out of nowhere Christian will do something to screw him and give Luchasaurus the win, and set up Jungle Boy versus Christian. A little later down the line.
See, that's what I like about this match. I can see the exact same scenario playing out with Jungle Boy still getting the win. They could book it either way as far as the win and loss to set up that future match. So it could be the interference, or it could be Jungle Boy gets the win and afterwards Christian gets on him. I mean, they could advance the angle either way. So that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah, it makes it tough to call.
Yeah, so just to be different, I'm going to pick Jungle Boy. I love your perspective on it. I really do. I think Jungle Boy will get the win to give him some momentum going into Christian, but it works either way. So hopefully they book it that way. Next up, we have another title match. This is for the Ring of Honor Championship. It's going to be a four-way match. The Ocho, Chris Jericho, will be defending against Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, pardon me, and Sammy Guevara. So two former Ring of Honor champions, Claudio under the AEW banner, and Danielson, of course, from back in the day when Ring of Honor was its own independent organization. Four-way matches can be tough to call sometimes, especially if you don't think the champion is going to retain. But do you think the champion will retain?
Yeah, this seems like a glorified tag match to me, with two JS guys and two Blackpool Combat Club guys. I fully expect Jericho to retain. He is the biggest name, biggest draw, biggest just everything in AEW. And I think what they're doing is trying to keep ROH alive and long enough to where he can get a TV deal to start a ROH show. Otherwise, I wish they would kind of just get rid of all this ROH talk. You're trying to build AEW up and trying to build up another company within AEW just seems like too much for me right now. I do like Jericho as the champion, but I think it's just too much. They've got enough going on in AEW that they don't need all these extra belts and title matches. And so I'm not as high on ROH anymore. I wish they would just, put it in the ground and move on. But if you are going to have a champion, Jericho's definitely the right guy to be that champion.
Jericho's Mr. Credibility. It's the reason why they put the title on him at
Right.
the beginning of AEW.
For sure.
Lots of non-wrestling fans know the name Chris Jericho. And this is no offense to the other three guys in this match, except maybe for Danielson, based on his time on Total Divas. There's going to be a few non-wrestling fans who know who he is, but don't know him under the name Daniel Bryan potentially. But all that said, Jericho's your more mainstream guy, the guy people have heard of. If indeed Ring of Honor is to be a spin-off, so to speak, where they get their own time slot, their own ring decor, their own commentators, all that, and to just completely remove it from the AEW landscape. Keep it under the same corporate umbrella, obviously, but move it from the landscape. Then yeah, Jericho's the guy you want to have that title. Would Jericho be a full-time Ring of Honor wrestler? Probably not. You get him going, drop the title to somebody, make his way back to AEW. So all that said, your point about being a glorified tag match is perfectly well taken. I think that's what's going to wind up looking like. I agree. Jericho wins. He's a great antagonistic heel champion. Why stop it now? Let him keep going.
Right. And he's their only hope for that if they're going to really try to get something from ROH. Because I mean, who's he going to? Who else is a big enough name that could lead this another startup essentially?
Right.
I don't think they have that. So, and then I mean, I definitely don't think Sammy's going to try to win that belt. Uh, I could see Claudio and Brian feuding with each other over the potential like win more than I would ever expect Sammy to come out. I think he's just kind of thrown in here. I'd rather see a singles match, honestly, but I didn't book the card.
All right. Speaking of the singles match, the next match is a TBS Championship match. Jade Cargill, Nyla Rose.
Hands down, the worst story in all of wrestling. I never have been a fan of this, never will be a fan of this. Oh, you stole my belt after a match. Now I'm the champion. I'm going to pretend to be the champion and parade your belt around. They've done this for 2 months now, seemingly. It's done nothing for Nyla Rose. It's done nothing for Jade Cargill. And, I think you could have a good story with these two women and have a great match, or a good match at least. But sometimes I say great a little too much. I think you could have a good match between the two of them, but the story's just so bad. And Jade is a superstar in the making. She's got the look, she's got the body, she's got the attitude, the moves. I think she's going to be a megastar for the women's division a few years down the line. But this is not helped her at all. It's not helped either of them at all. And I mean, who honestly thinks that Nyla Rose is going to end up winning? Of course, Jade's going to beat her and get her title back. She's been literally chasing it for 2 months.
I hope Jade Cargill wins this match in less time than it took for you to talk about it. And we can all just
right. Yes. Yes.
This
should be a pre-show match, and I'm not really looking forward to this one, honestly. Yeah. Probably the worst match on the card.
Yep. Yeah, all right. So next is not an actual book match quite yet. They're having the tournament to see who gets the AEW title match at Winter is Coming. We have 5 people still alive in the tournament, so I'm just going to list all 5 and we'll talk about who we think is going to come out on top. We have Ethan Page, Bandito, Brian Cage, Ricky Starks, and Lance Archer. Those are 5 people who are still eligible to win this tournament. Who stands out to you as most likely to win?
Well, of those names listed, it seems like 2 doesn't really fit. A lot of big guys. But Bandito's kind of an outlier amongst the giants, so I think I'm going to pick him. I think he just recently went all elite and got his tweet from Tony Khan saying that. I think he's incredible. He's incredible wrestler. Um, he's the only one out of that group that I think could hold a belt. Now the problem with him is I don't believe he speaks great English. So with that being said, I think I'll probably lean towards Ricky Starks, who was on fire. AEW's made the mistake that they've done 3 or 4 times with 3 or 4 different guys now. They get them hot as firecrackers and then just cool them off. It makes no sense to me, but I love Ricky Starks. I think he's a future star, and I think I'm going to go with Ricky in that.
So, of course, this match or this tournament is going to be dependent on who wins the championship match that we'll discuss at the end, of course. I feel like whoever wins this tournament will not become AEW champion, especially
No.
if MJF takes the title. If Mox retains, it's possible, but they're not going to get MJF the title and then spin him off and have him lose a quick match to a random tournament participant. So that said, who can win this tournament and take the loss and not have it hurt their status a little bit? I'm going to actually take Ethan Page. Now, he's my pick to win it so that he can go in and lose a match. And that if MJF is champion, MJF versus Page, Ethan Page, with the whole deal with him in the firm would make for a decent story.
That would make the most sense by far, I think, if you're trying to tie everything together. Lance Archer hasn't been on TV in I don't know how long, and when he was, they never did anything with him. Bandito just signed. Ricky Starks has kind of a injury list of history, and I don't know if that's really the right place for him. Ethan Page, to me, that was an upset win over Eddie Kingston, and he's probably the best as far as if they're going to go with MJF winning the title. That would make sense for a first feud because he fired the firm.
Right.
So I agree with you there.
Yeah, it depends on what direction the other one's going. 3 matches left. One of them is one you basically called on the show last week. You just nailed it as hard as anyone can nail it. We're gonna have Sting and Darby Allin team up to face Jeff Jarrett and a partner, which is exactly what you said last week. Congratulations for your crest abilities. That partner is going to be Jay Lethal. So Jay Lethal, Jeff Jarrett against Sting and Darby Allin.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. I got a little lucky there. I guess with all the years and years of watching wrestling, you just kind of learn to see what's coming a little at times. It's going to protect Sting a little, with his age, and Jarrett for that matter, putting him in a tag team match. It's going to be a crazy, great match. Darby and Sting will be taking big risks. But I think honestly, if you're gonna give Jarrett any kind of a push or power or making him a main character, I think it would help them out to win more than it would hurt Sting and Darby. I think the fans are fully behind Sting and Darby, and I don't think it would hurt them to lose. So I guess I'll pick Jay Lethal and Jarrett, and in a small upset, they'll probably cheat, use Satnam Singh, or the guy with the pencil. I can't remember his name.
I think you're talking about here.
Yeah, Sanjay. That's it, Sanjay. So they'll probably going to cheat, but I think it'll be cool to see Jarrett and Sting going at it again. Kind of makes you relive WCW early days.
Right. It's just funny. You reminded me of something when you called him the guy with the pencil, because I'm of the belief. We talked about this off screen, and I want to bring it up to the audience now. I am convinced that William Regal calls Excalibur the man with the mask because he forgot his name, and
it just stuck.
Yeah, he's
it sounded good.
Booth, and he couldn't remember his name, so he just called him man in the mask. So yeah, Sanjay Dutt's the guy with the pencil.
It's sad that that's all that character's done, though. I mean, it's not like they've really done anything with these guys. They bring in this 7'10" giant and do nothing with him. So I mean, I think overall, I think it would do them a lot of good to get a big win.
Yeah.
And they need a heel. They need heels and like a powerful heel group, like so that's my 2 cents on that match.
And I like that. And the fact that you called the match happening as well as you did makes me loath to get on the other side of you when it comes to picking the winner. So I don't think Sting's lost the match in AEW. I don't know if he has or not. That doesn't matter. If they think it's time for him to lose a match, he doesn't have to take the pin necessarily. Um,
No, no.
yeah,
They could have
so,
Darby get choke
yeah, I
slammed
agree.
by Satnam Singh or something. And, yeah, there's a million ways they can get around that. I think, though, being that it is a pay-per-view, I think there's definitely going to be a guitar shot.
Yeah, you would think so. So yep. I'm not going to get on the wrong side of you in this match. This is this is your baby as far as I'm. So I'm going with Lethal and Jared as well. And now we've come down to what I think everyone would agree are the two biggest matches on the card. First off, we will talk about. We'll continue our conversation from earlier. We have Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, taking on Soraya. And we've already given a preview of sorts of this match. Let's jump in and see who we think's going to win. Hit it with it, Steven.
My pick, without question, her first match back, it would be tough to have Soraya lose. I think the crowd's going to be behind her. I think for her own personal, like, well-being and just confidence and everything. I think Paige or daggone it, Soraya needs needs the win. She deserves the win for coming back and fighting through everything she's fought through. And I think this will be one of, if not the best women's match they've ever had. And this is the biggest reason why I will be buying the pay-per-view.
Here's the thing. Everything you just said, I would be 1,000,000% on board with if they went with any other opponent other than Britt. I wasn't a fan of them going straight to this program because you're right. Soraya kind of needs to win the match,
Yeah,
and Britt has done so much for the company. It's not to say that she can never lose. Of course, she can lose, but it seems to me that Paige would. I just did it too. It seems to me that Soraya would be okay if she lost to Britt, especially if it's one of those you can build off it. It could be a heartbreaking loss. She can get kind of an underdog status. It's her first match. That's the way to explain it away. It's her first
well,
match in 4 years. She has
yeah,
got the ring rust. She's going up against the best the business has to offer, which is how they'd sell it. And she came up
absolutely.
just short. Um, that would be a more difficult story to tell. That's why I want Britt to win. It's the
I
same reason I wanted Drew McIntyre to beat Roman Reigns in his WrestleMania comeback. And that sounds almost sacrilegious. Dude's coming back from cancer, has a baby face, and the crowd's behind him. You want him to lose? Yeah, because you can build that story. So obviously WWE didn't go in that direction. I don't think AEW will either. I'm picking Soraya to win the match, but I think they should give it to Britt.
well, you could do the old you know, Britt Baker cheats to win. That's kind of her MO. She's gonna have the Dallas Cowgirl cheerleader, I went blank on her name, out at ringside with her.
Trouble. It took me a
Yeah,
second.
yeah. I could for the life of me come up with that. So I think they could get away with, like, Soraya's dominating the match. She's looking strong as hell and kicking Baker's butt, and then a little cheap spot. It would give Britt Baker major heat, which would be good for a heel. It would give Soraya major sympathy, which is what a babyface needs. So I think they could do it that way, but I think just because it is her first match back after all these years, I think they're going to give her a win, kind of crowd pleaser. You're right about DMD. She single-handedly, in my eyes, built the AEW women's division. Essentially, she was by far the top woman star, and still is to this day. So I mean, it could go either way, but in my heart, I feel Soraya is gonna take this one, and then maybe round two goes to the doctor.
I'm with you. I'm certain Soraya is going to win. We need to find out if it's Soraya or Soraya. We have to do some research on that. They both sound great. I think they both sound great, but one of them's going to be correct, and we don't want to call her by the wrong name or
Sure.
pronounce her name incorrectly. Speaking for myself, my name gets mispronounced all the time, so I get it.
Yeah, you.
But
Yeah.
I think the harder story, but the better story, would be to give it to Brett, even clean. But I don't see it happening.
That would shock me if they gave it to Britt Baker clean.
I would
I,
love it.
I would be a little shocked by that for sure.
I think there's more story to come from it. It's a more difficult story to tell. But you called me an author, you called me a writer. These things are true. That's the story I would like. I would like to tell. So, all right, we are coming down to the main event, and what's good about AEW pay per views in comparison to their television? It seems more often than not that TV matches are fairly easy to predict. Not to say that you'd get every single one of them right, but they're a little bit more predictable than maybe they should be. But in turn, their pay per view matches are really tough to pick. I
That's very
remember,
fair.
yeah, CM Punk versus Hangman Page for the title. That was a coin flip about who was going to win that match. It was really hard to tell. And we got the same situation, I think, coming up. And we've done good to lay off mentioning these two guys too much on the show to this point because they're the main event of that pay per view. They're the main event of our podcast. We're talking about AEW World Champion Jon Moxley defending against Maxwell Jacob Friedman, better known to y'all as MJF. We're looking for a great match, no question about it. Tell us what you think might go down.
It's time for the main event. Shout out Howard Finkel.
Yes.
R.I.P. This match is huge for MJF. I think Mox has been the most consistent champion in wrestling. Or I mean, I'm sorry, yeah, the most consistent AEW champion they've had. He seems to be their go-to in a pinch if somebody gets hurt, and that's because he's that good.
Yep.
He is an incredible wrestler. If you like his style, even if you don't, you have to respect him. The guy's worked his tail off. He's overcome his own battles and addictions, and I think we're gonna get the best Mox that he has to offer over the next year or so. That said, the way they're building this as this is the generational superstar taking his rightful place in his mind at least. I think MJF is going to become the face of AEW and become the heavyweight champion in kind of a shocker. And I think a lot of it has to do with his promo skills. He is so good at talking and making you believe or hate him or whatever he wants you to think. He can make you think it. And whether it's by like a surprise new person coming and cheating and screwing Moxley over, or if it's even clean, which that would be another huge shocker to me if MJF beat him clean. I think MJF gets it done. They start to look towards the future a bit more, and I think he's going to get his first reign. I really do. I think this is the time for MJF to be the face of AEW.
So I'm gonna nitpick two things, not anything you said, just two things in general. Number one, Wednesday is still Dynamite, and there's still something that may emerge out of that show that could get us leaning one way or another. But the other thing I want to say is that there are four other championship matches on this card. And according to our predictions, and I think that might be a consensus if you talk to a majority of wrestling fans, all four of those matches are going to involve title retentions. This would be, if MJF wins, the only title change on the show. So part of me hopes kind of they do switch a title at some point on the show. I don't know where they do it, and it would be just for the sake of doing it. Because coming into the main event, of course, at that point, the card will have played out. And it will plant the seed in a lot of people's minds that the title is going to change hands just for the sake of it. I hope that's not the direction they go in for that reason. Not to say that I don't think they should put the title on MJF, but not just to give us a title change on the show.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah.
Very fair point. If no titles change hands until the last match, then I would say it's a for sure thing.
Yeah,
But like you said, I don't think the Acclaim are going to lose.
right.
I think Jade is going to get her title back, so that's not really her losing. You know what I mean? She's just getting it back. It's not really changing hands. And what am I? Is there TNT? I don't think there's a TNT title match announced yet. So unless they announce that, that could be the area that they swap a belt. You know, for the sake of swapping a belt on the title or on a pay per view. But even if they don't, I'm going with MJF to upset Moxley. I just think it's his time.
I think it's almost his time. Almost. I think they have to consider the other thing too is that they don't really have him locked up on the contract the way they do most of their guys. He's talked about the bidding war in 2024.
I've heard that he has secretly signed an extension though, and that's just going to be kind of a storyline.
And then again, WWE put a title on CM Punk before they really had his name to paper.
Sure.
So I'm gonna play this one closer to the vest as far as my pick goes. I'm gonna pick Moxley. I think it gives MJF a chance to regenerate. He doesn't need to rebuild because he's already there, but to regenerate a little bit, maybe get into the feud with the Firm. I don't see him needing that the championship to go into that. And of course, that kind of contradicts my pick earlier when I picked Ethan Page because I'm of the mind that they're gonna give it to MJF. But my pick is still Moxley. Does that even make sense? I don't know, but I'm going with it. It sounds like I'm hedging, and that's fair if you believe that. You, Steven, you, the viewer, if you believe that. But if I were booking the show, I'd give it to Mox.
You can't go wrong with that by any means. I think Mox is a safer pick for sure. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get a top superstar. My thing is, I just don't know who they're going to pit him against. I don't know if he's got any challengers left, so to speak, So I think with MJF, he would have more people gunning. He's screwed over so many guys. He's talked bad about so many people. There's a lot more potential feuds in the making there. But you can't go wrong with either of these guys as your champions in my eyes. I think MJF could be the next Ric Flair, and Moxley. He's a great champion. He's like the modern day Steve Austin in a sense. Obviously not as hot or as massively known, but coming through the crowd, he's the people's guy. He's from Cincinnati. He's a blue collar type of guy, and I think a lot of people love and respect that. So either one can't go wrong, but my pick is MJF.
See, that's great. That's what we're talking about. The points are extremely well taken, and AEW pay-per-view matches tend to put us in the air a little bit about who's going to win and who's going to lose, and that's mostly rather the point, isn't it? So
right, that's what makes it fun. That's what drew us into wrestling and why we love it.
And we are looking forward to this show. Absolutely, we're looking forward to Dynamite. This episode is probably going to be released later Tuesday evening. So if you're catching us right when we release it, Dynamite will not have aired yet. If you're happen to catch us a little bit later, maybe we sound like a little behind the ball because Dynamite is coming out according to when this video is going to be released the next day. But we're looking forward to Dynamite this week, Smackdown this week, and it's pay-per-view week. So when we're back on next week, we're going to start the show the way we did last week for our first episode. We're going to run down the card or the results of Full Gear, what we thought about it, what we think it's going to lead to. And it's going to sound more like an AEW-centric show. And pay-per-views are going to do that, as we have mentioned. But before we sign off today for our second episode, I want to take the opportunity to thank every single person out there listening. We got a couple of friends that we know. They run their own YouTube channel. Their names are Alex and Shelby. The name of their channel is It's in the Blood. It's in the Blood. They gave us a little shout on their show. We have to give it back. Steven, there's someone you wanted to shout as far as someone who gave us some props?
Well, I definitely wanted to remind you to shout them out. We work with them. They're great people. They run a very good channel. I also wanted to mention when a new episode does come out, available on Spotify, available on YouTube. I'll also be tweeting out a link of that from our Twitter, which is at Catching Flies W1. Uh, like like the videos on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Please give us any feedback you have. If there's anything you want to hear us debate or talk about, let us know. Um, we love wrestling and talking about it each week, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to give you our thoughts each and every week. So just give us a follow, give us a listen, give us a like. It's free, you know.
As the
So
best ever.
appreciate everybody who listens, though. We thank you very much for the love and support, and we're gonna keep working hard, getting better, and pumping these out. So just follow along, hop on for the ride, and that'll do it for this week's episode 2 of the Catching Flies Wrestling Podcast. For Pete Mahadas, I am Stephen Burton. Thank you, and so long.